Chapter 2. The law is a license to steal. With citations. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men living together in society, they create for themselves in the course of time a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it.
Frédéric Bastiat.
Imagine a thief who writes the rules that make theft legal. Not only legal but respectable. Praiseworthy. Even patriotic. This is not metaphor. It is the origin of modern legal systems, not as checks on power but as justifications for it. Law did not emerge to restrain the powerful. It emerged to restrain the powerless, to institutionalize the spoils of conquest, and to dress theft in the robes of civilization. Ownership is a political invention. There is nothing natural about private property. The idea that a person can draw lines, call it theirs forever, and pass it on like a birthright is one of the most violent inventions in human history. The doctrine of ownership, as we know it, developed in tandem with colonial expansion. European monarchs claimed entire continents, then used legal instruments, discovery, vacancy, eminent domain, to turn claims into enforceable titles. In these processes, whole civilizations were declared illegal, their lands vacant, or their inhabitants invisible in law. In U.S. legal history, the Supreme Court's decisions, e.g. the Marshall-Johnson v. McIntosh Doctrine, effectively enshrined this logic of dispossession in jurisprudence. The court treated native nations as having inferior, or mere occupancy rights, subject to extinguishment by the sovereign. See Dispossession is 9/10 of the law and related scholarship on the Marshall Trilogy. Title registries, too, played a key role. They transformed land continuously occupied under customary tenure into title-based parcels governed by colonial law, validating ownership claims, even when those lands had been seized violently or unfairly. In short, the legal framework of property is not a neutral technical system. It is a mechanism that validates theft. Who writes the laws and who they are written for? To believe law is impartial, we must ignore who writes it. Legal authorship has historically belonged to landed elites, colonial administrators, and legal professionals with a vested interest in maintaining hierarchy. These actors design not only rules but loopholes. They define crimes, set penalties, regulate contracts, and determine who has standing to object. They preserve power under the guise of neutrality. Owning stolen land. Legal. Squatting in a tent. Criminal. Dumping waste into a river with permit. Legal. Stealing bread to live. Criminal. The difference often lies not in morality, but in law, and those who drafted it. Contracts, consent, and the illusion of choice. Legal theft often hides behind the paper shield of contracts. We are told contracts are sacred agreements freely entered. But rarely are those entering them equal in power, knowledge, or freedom. The poorer or more desperate party often consents under compulsion. In legal theory and practice, many so-called free contracts are actually coercive. The employer's leverage, the threat of unemployment, skews consent. Superscript 3. The law often validates this structural injustice. The myth of consent obscures the reality. When options are few, signing is survival. The signature becomes the cage. Borders, the most violent invention of all. Few legal inventions more clearly expose theft than the border. Lines drawn by imperial powers now dictate who may move, who may live, and who must deport. They were never about safety. They were about containment and extraction. Borders regulate bodies, labor supply, resource flow, and enforce theft. Contracts and property claims are often valid only to those on the inside. Legal theft in the modern world. Today's legal theft is subtle but powerful. Corporations pay negligible rents to governments for resource extraction. Local communities are displaced through eminent domain. Debt markets, structural adjustment programs, and trade agreements all exact extraction under law. All of it legal. All of it celebrated. All of it framed as progress. The law does not conceal theft, it normalizes it. It explains it. It provides scholars, lawyers, regulators, and citizens with frameworks that make legal theft comprehensible and acceptable. Development. Governance. Civilization. Vocabulary of power. What's at stake in naming it? Many recoil at the claim that law is theft. It challenges identity, stability, security. Many of us have built our lives on what law grants us: citizenship, contract, title. But naming the theft is not destruction. It is liberation. It clears space for imagining law differently, centering justice rather than wealth. Before we can redeem law, we must reveal it. We must strip away its sacred aura and see it for what it has always been: not protection for the many, but a sword for the powerful. Once we understand that, the next question flows naturally. If law protects stolen wealth, what else is built on that same foundation? Footnotes/reference notes for chapters 1 and 2. See Dispossession is 9/10 of the law, which examines how the martial court's land decisions entrenched land theft doctrine. Park K. Sue, The History, Wars and Property Law, Conquest and Slavery as Foundational to the Field, Yale Law Journal, 2022, on how title registries solidified colonial dispossession. Acemoglu D. The Economics of Labor Coercion, Analysis of how coercion functions in contractual